the hidden Stoic mindset that conquers fear. Fear is the oldest enemy of humankind. It walked with our ancestors when they first lit fires in dark caves, when they first set sail into oceans that seemed endless, when they first looked up at the night sky and wondered if tomorrow would come. Fear is ancient, and though the world has changed, fear itself has not. It still grips your chest when you stand before others to speak. It still tightens your stomach when you consider losing the job that feeds your family. It still whispers in your mind when illness threatens your body or uncertainty clouds your future. What has changed are the costumes fear wears, modern clothes, modern worries, but beneath it all, it remains the same adversary. You may think you are alone in your fear. You may believe that you are uniquely weak because you tremble at the thought of rejection or because you lose sleep over what tomorrow may bring. But the truth is that emperors and slaves alike have felt exactly what you feel. Marcus Aurelius, who commanded the most powerful empire in the world, sat alone in his tent during a plague and confessed in his journal the same anxieties you know today. Epictetus, born a slave, crippled by his master, still had to wrestle with fear when he was young. Even Seneca, the philosopher whose words still echo with wisdom, admitted that his heart pounded when sudden danger came. The difference was not that these Stoics were born fearless. It was that they discovered a way to meet fear without letting it govern them. And here lies the secret I will reveal to you. There is a hidden Stoic mindset that does not merely resist fear, but conquers it, reshapes it, and makes it powerless. Once you see fear for what it truly is, you will no longer shrink before it. You will learn to stand unshaken, not because fear is gone, but because you have become greater than it. This mindset is not ancient superstition, nor is it a trick of the imagination. It is a practical way of seeing, thinking, and living, a discipline that you can practice today in the midst of your struggles. The men and women who adopted it became unbreakable, and if you listen and apply it, so can you. To master fear, we must begin by naming it clearly. What is fear? It is not a monster outside of you, though it feels that way. It is not a shadow that falls over your life, though it can darken your days. Fear is a judgment, nothing more. The Stoics were clear on this point. Fear arises when the mind anticipates a future harm and accepts that harm as terrible. Epictetus said it best: men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. Fear is not in the thing itself. It is in the judgment you attach to the thing. Death itself is natural. Poverty is simply a condition of life. The opinion of others is nothing but their passing thought. And yet, when your mind judges these as unbearable, fear is born. Think of the moments that trouble you most. You are asked to speak before a crowd, and instantly your heart races. Why? Not because of the act of speaking. Your voice has served you since childhood. It is because you judge the disapproval of the crowd as something too heavy to bear. Or imagine your company whispers of layoffs. The possibility of losing your job stirs dread. But why? Not because of work itself. It is because you have judged unemployment as ruin. Even illness itself, which the body feels, is compounded by the mind's judgment. This is dreadful. This cannot be endured. Fear is not simply sensation. It is the meaning you have given that sensation. Modern science, in its way, agrees. Psychologists tell us that fear is an interpretation of signals, a story the brain tells when it predicts danger. Two people may face the same event. One trembles, another smiles. The difference is not in the event, but in the story each one believes. The Stoics knew this long before. They knew that if you can change your judgment, you can change your experience of fear. Seneca put it sharply: we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. How many of your fears have already proven false? How many nights of worry were wasted because the danger never came? And even when it did come, was it not often smaller than the fear that preceded it? The essence of fear, then, is this. It is a projection of the mind, a shadow cast into the future. It is the anticipation of pain magnified by imagination. But shadows vanish when you bring them into the light. To conquer fear, you must bring it into reason. You must examine it, strip away its disguise, and see it as it is, an opinion, a judgment, a thought. It may still speak, it may still whisper, but it will no longer command you. And this is the first lesson of the Stoic path. Fear is not fate, it is not destiny, it is not an external tyrant. It is a decision you make about what tomorrow holds. Change the decision, and the tyrant is dethroned. Fear weakens the soul because it places your freedom in chains. When you tremble before what may happen tomorrow, you surrender today. You give your peace, your clarity, and your strength to a phantom. The Stoics knew that nothing destroys the human spirit more than living in subjection to what has not yet happened. When you live in fear, you become a servant to fortune. You are pulled this way and that, like a ship without a captain, because you have given control of your mind to whatever danger your imagination invents. Consider how fear manifests in your life. You hesitate to act because you are afraid of failure. You delay speaking truth because you fear rejection. You refuse opportunities because you fear embarrassment. Each time, fear robs you twice. First in the dread of what may happen, and second in the loss of what you might have gained had you acted boldly. This is why fear is not just unpleasant. It is destructive. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and this double suffering is the thief of life. You endure the pain of defeat before you have even tried, and so you are defeated already. Fear also blinds the mind. It distorts perspective until the smallest challenges grow into towering giants. A conversation with a stranger becomes unbearable. A presentation becomes the end of your career. A cough becomes the certainty of death. Fear magnifies what is small and paralyzes you before it can be tested against reality. And so you avoid the very situations that could have proven your strength. In this way, fear builds walls around you, limiting your growth, narrowing your world, until your life is governed not by your will, but by your anxieties. Worse still, fear distracts you from virtue. The Stoics taught that the good life depends on living with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. But when fear rules you, you abandon these virtues. The coward cannot be just, for he fears the consequences of fairness. The anxious cannot be wise, for his mind is clouded by dread. The hesitant cannot be courageous, for fear binds his hands. Thus, fear does not merely disturb you, it corrupts your character. To allow fear to rule is to forfeit the very essence of your humanity. And yet, fear is persuasive. It whispers that it is protecting you, that it is keeping you safe. But look closely. Does fear actually shield you, or does it keep you from the life you wish to live? The truth is clear. When you bow to fear, you pay with your freedom, your happiness, and your soul. This is why the Stoics treated fear not as a passing emotion, but as a tyrant to be overthrown. To conquer fear is not simply to feel better. It is to reclaim your life from the prison of anxiety. This is why we must uncover the hidden mindset that transforms fear into something powerless. The hidden Stoic mindset is not merely about resisting fear, nor is it about pretending it does not exist. It is about transforming fear into an ally, into a signal that points the way forward. The Stoics taught us to face what we dread and to embrace it as part of nature's order. The name of this hidden mindset is simple, yet its practice is profound. amor fati, the love of fate. To love fate is not to wish for misfortune, but to accept that whatever comes is necessary for the unfolding of the universe. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything thrown into it." The hidden Stoic mindset is to become that fire, to consume fear and use it as fuel for strength. What does this mean in practice? It means that when fear whispers, "This will ruin you," the Stoic mind answers, "Then let it come, for I will turn it into strength." When fear says, "You will lose everything," the Stoic replies, "Then I will learn what it is to live with nothing and still be free." To love fate is to meet fear not with resistance, but with openness. If the worst should happen, it will reveal your power to endure. If it never happens, fear was wasted breath. In either case, you remain unshaken. This mindset is hidden because most of the world resists what it fears. People run from fear, hide from it, numb themselves against it. They imagine courage means never feeling fear at all, but the Stoics knew otherwise. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. And mastery begins when you turn to face fear and say, "You will not command me." This is why Epictetus taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. The hidden mindset is mastery, the discipline of seeing fear for what it is, welcoming it as part of life, and using it to sharpen your strength. There is a paradox here that the Stoics embraced. Fear itself is the doorway to courage. Without fear, courage cannot exist. If you never feel fear, you cannot practice bravery. Thus, every fearful moment is an opportunity, a chance to cultivate the virtue that outlasts every struggle. The hidden Stoic mindset teaches you to walk into the places that make your heart pound, not recklessly, but willingly. For in those moments, you are given the chance to practice the very thing that will set you free. The modern mind often seeks comfort as a refuge from fear, but the Stoic seeks fear itself as the path to freedom. This is the reversal, the secret. Do not fight fear as an enemy, but welcome it as a teacher. Every shadow of fear points to an inner chain that can be broken. Every anxious thought is an invitation to test your strength. The hidden Stoic mindset does not simply ask, "How do I get rid of fear?" It asks, "How can I grow because of fear?" In this way, fear ceases to be a tyrant and becomes a servant to your growth. And once you have seen fear this way, it loses the power to rule you ever again. The power of control lies at the heart of Stoic teaching. Epictetus declared, "Some things are up to us, and some are not." In this single division rests the key to conquering fear. For what is fear, if not the trembling before things we cannot command? You worry about whether others will praise you or condemn you. You dread the chance of illness or disaster. You agonize over whether fortune will bless you with wealth or strip you bare. Yet none of these are in your hands. They belong to the realm of fate. And when you cling to what is not yours, fear will always follow. What is truly in your control? Your thoughts, your choices, your actions. You may not control the storm, but you control the ship of your mind. You may not dictate whether people love you, but you control whether you live justly and with integrity. You may not command life's length, but you control how nobly you spend each moment. The Stoics remind us that the boundary of control is the fortress of freedom. Once you withdraw your fear from the outside world and anchor it in your own will, you become untouchable. Think of the fears that gnaw at you. You fear losing your job. Can you guarantee the stability of the market? No. Can you prevent the decisions of those above you? No. But you can control your diligence, your character, and your adaptability. Fear fades when you focus on what is yours to shape. Or consider the fear of rejection. Can you force another to accept you? No. But you can govern your honesty, your words, and your courage in speaking them. By resting in what is yours, you cease to tremble at what is not. This dichotomy of control is not a distant theory. It is a daily practice. Write down your fears. Divide them into two columns, one for what you can control, one for what you cannot. Then, resolve to spend your energy only on the first. Each time you catch yourself worrying about the uncontrollable, return to your own will, your own reason, your own virtue. Fear weakens where clarity strengthens. And when you live within the fortress of control, you find the mind no longer shakes with every storm. The Stoics went further. They did not merely tell us to divide fears into controllable and uncontrollable. They trained themselves to embrace what they could endure. Seneca advised his students to practice poverty even while rich, to sleep on the floor, to eat simple food, to wear rough clothing, so that when real poverty arrived, they would not fear it. Set aside a certain number of days, he wrote, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself all the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" This practice of voluntary discomfort is the antidote to fear's grip. Fear whispers, "If you lose wealth, you will perish." But once you have lived simply by choice, you discover that life continues and fear loses its sting. Fear warns, if you are rejected, you will be destroyed. But once you have stood exposed, spoken plainly, and endured disapproval, you realize rejection cannot kill you. Fear terrifies you with the thought of cold, hunger, solitude. But when you have tasted them willingly, you discover they are survivable. And in that discovery, freedom is born. Modern life offers endless comfort. You need not face cold or hunger if you do not wish to. But this very abundance breeds fragility, for when discomfort finally arrives, you are unprepared. The Stoic trains against this fragility. He fasts so that when food is scarce, he knows hunger will not break him. He steps into cold water so that winter winds cannot make him despair. He practices silence so that loneliness cannot crush him. Each voluntary hardship becomes a rehearsal for fate, a shield against the terror of the unknown. You do not train in discomfort to suffer needlessly. You train so that fear cannot deceive you. Fear inflates discomfort into catastrophe. But when you have walked willingly into hardship, you see its true size. It is smaller than fear promised. It is endurable. It is nothing to dread. The man who has practiced sleeping on the floor cannot be frightened by the loss of a bed. The woman who has spoken boldly cannot be silenced by the threat of gossip. Discomfort, once embraced, becomes strength. To conquer fear, then, you must live in two ways. First, by anchoring your life within the boundaries of control, refusing to waste energy on what lies beyond. Second, by stepping willingly into small hardships, stripping fear of its disguise, and proving to yourself that life remains good, even in simplicity. In this way, you weaken fear not by argument alone, but by experience. You teach your soul through practice that it is unbreakable, and once you have tasted this truth, no fear can hold dominion over you again. Reason is the sword that cuts through fear. The Stoics called it logos, the rational order of the universe, and the spark of that same reason within each of us. Fear thrives in confusion, in shadows, in the fog of imagination. It magnifies what has not yet happened and blinds the mind with panic. But reason brings clarity. It forces us to ask, what exactly am I afraid of? Is it truly unbearable, or does it only seem so in this moment? Marcus Aurelius often calmed himself with such questions, reminding his mind that if a thing is endurable, then it must be endured without complaint. When fear grips you, pause and turn to reason. Ask yourself, what is the worst that could happen? And then, can I endure it? More often than not, the worst is survivable. You may lose money, but you will not lose your ability to think and act. You may lose reputation, but you will not lose your integrity unless you choose to. You may even lose life, but death itself is simply the dissolution of body into the elements. Seen with reason's eye, fear shrinks into its true size. Epictetus taught his students to bring every fear before the court of reason. Suppose you fear poverty. Reason asks, what is poverty but living with less? Have you not endured hunger before? Have you not survived with little? Suppose you fear sickness. Reason asks, is sickness not part of nature's cycle? Do not all men and women eventually fall ill? And does your fear cure you, or does it make the suffering heavier? Reason shows that fear adds weight without removing danger. To strip away fear is not to deny pain, but to refuse to suffer twice, once in imagination and again in reality. In this way, reason transforms fear into courage. Courage is not blind recklessness. It is the steady heart that sees clearly what lies ahead and chooses to act nobly nonetheless. Reason does not promise that danger will vanish. It promises only that danger will never be as unbearable as fear paints it. When you stand armed with reason, you see through fear's illusions and recognize that the only true evil is surrendering your will to it. Everything else can be endured with dignity. The Stoics did not simply speak of fearlessness, they lived it. Their lives stand as monuments to what the human spirit can endure when guided by wisdom. Consider Epictetus. Born into slavery, his body broken by a cruel master who twisted his leg until it remained crippled for life. Many would have lived in bitterness, consumed by the fear of further suffering. But Epictetus rose above his condition. He declared that while his body could be bound, his will remained free. He taught generations of students that fear had no dominion over a man who had mastered his own mind. Or take Cato the Younger, the Roman statesman. He lived in a time when Julius Caesar threatened to extinguish the Republic and replace it with tyranny. Cato opposed him with unbending resolve. He knew the dangers of his stance. He knew it might cost him his life. And when defeat became certain, he chose death rather than live in submission. His act was not despair, but defiance, a declaration that no fear, not even fear of death itself, could force him to betray his principles. Marcus Aurelius offers yet another example. Emperor of Rome, burdened with wars on the frontiers, plagued by political treachery, and tormented by the Antonine plague that decimated his people. He faced loss upon loss, friends, children, generals, and yet he returned each night to his journal, writing words that steadied his soul. If it is in accordance with nature, it is not evil. Despite commanding armies, Marcus waged his greatest battle within, against fear and despair. His victory was not in conquering nations, but in conquering himself. These examples are not distant curiosities, they are lessons for us today. Epictetus shows that no external chains can enslave a free mind. Cato shows that fear loses its power when faced with principles stronger than death. Marcus shows that even amidst plague and war, one can cultivate inner peace. And beyond these ancient figures, countless unnamed men and women have lived stoically, meeting hardship with calm, meeting danger with reason, meeting death with dignity. Fearlessness, then, is not reserved for the great. It is available to anyone who practices the Stoic path. You need not be an emperor or a senator to conquer fear. You need only master your own judgments, refuse to surrender to what is beyond your control, and face life with reason as your guide. In this way, the examples of the Stoics are not distant tales, but living invitations. If they could live without fear in their storms, you can live without fear in yours. The Stoics knew that fear cannot be defeated in a single moment of resolve. It must be weakened daily, trained against like an enemy who never sleeps. This is why they built habits to guard their minds. Marcus Aurelius rose each morning and reminded himself that he would meet meddling, ungrateful, selfish, and deceitful men. By preparing for hardship before the day began, he stripped fear of its element of surprise. Epictetus urged his students to rehearse difficulties in thought, to imagine insult, poverty, illness, and even death, so that when they arrived, the soul would already be armed. Daily training took many forms. Journaling was one of the most powerful. At night, the Stoics wrote down what had happened during the day, where they had succeeded, where they had faltered, where fear had whispered into their decisions. Seneca called it self-examination. By reviewing the day, he ensured that each tomorrow would be lived with greater mastery. Fear thrives in forgetfulness, when you do not notice its subtle victories, but by writing and reflecting, you shine a light on its hiding places, and it loses ground. Visualization was another tool. Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, was the practice of imagining difficulties before they came. Suppose you feared losing wealth. You would picture yourself living with little, dressing simply, eating bread and water. Suppose you feared insult. You would imagine hearing harsh words and standing calm. By imagining hardships beforehand, the Stoics dulled their sting. What once seemed unbearable became familiar, and what is familiar cannot tear. Imagine a life where fear no longer holds dominion over you. Not a life free from challenges, pain, or loss, but a life where these no longer shake your soul. This is what the Stoics meant by true freedom. When fear is conquered, calmness becomes your natural state. Storms may rage around you, but within there is stillness. Decisions become clearer because you are no longer swayed by anxiety or the opinions of others. Action becomes swifter because hesitation has been replaced by courage. Such freedom is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet strength, the kind that remains when wealth is gone, when health falters, when the world disapproves. The anxious man builds castles of security, but his mind trembles at every crack. The fearless man may live in a hut, but his soul is a fortress no army can breach. The anxious man fears tomorrow, so he wastes today. The fearless man accepts tomorrow as fate, so he lives today fully. Seneca said, "He who has overcome his fears will truly be free." Freedom does not lie in controlling fortune, but in releasing its chains. It does not lie in bending the world to your desires, but in bending your desires to what is within your power. This freedom is not given by wealth or status. It is forged in the furnace of discipline, reason, and courage. And once gained, it cannot be taken. The tyrant may threaten you with chains, but if you do not fear them, you remain free. Death may knock at your door, but if you do not fear it, you remain free. Misfortune may strike, but if you embrace it as fate, you remain free. This is the promise of Stoicism. Not that life will be gentle, but that you will become stronger than life's blows. And when you live without fear, you begin to live as you were meant to live, with clarity, with dignity, with joy untainted by anxiety. Fear loses its voice, and in its silence you hear the steady song of freedom. The wisdom of the Stoics is not bound to the past. Modern practices echo their ancient disciplines, showing how timeless these truths are. In cognitive behavioral therapy, a leading form of modern psychology, patients are taught to examine their thoughts, challenge distortions, and replace fear-driven beliefs with rational ones. This is precisely what Epictetus taught centuries ago. It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. To change judgment is to change life. Mindfulness meditation, popular across the world today, trains people to observe their thoughts without attachment, to let fear arise and pass without clinging. Marcus Aurelius did the same in his meditations, writing his fears onto the page and watching them dissolve under the light of reason. Both practices teach the same skill. You are not your fear, but the observer of it. And when you see fear clearly, it loses its power. Minimalism, too, mirrors Stoic discipline. In a world drowning in consumption, minimalists choose simplicity, releasing the fear of losing possessions by refusing to be owned by them. Seneca practiced this when he wore rough clothes and ate coarse food by choice. Voluntary simplicity is not deprivation, but liberation. It teaches you to live with less so that fear of loss cannot enslave you. Even digital detoxes, the modern attempt to step back from the noise of endless information, carry Stoic echoes. The Stoics warned against being swept up in the crowd, against filling the mind with gossip and distraction. They sought solitude to reflect, to train, to strengthen the soul. Today, stepping away from screens can give the same clarity, a space where fear no longer feeds on comparison and noise. The tools may change, but the principle is the same. Fear is mastered by reason, discipline, and practice. Whether in the Forum of Rome or the rush of modern cities, the human heart still trembles at the same shadows. And in every age, the Stoic mindset proves itself timeless. It shows us that freedom lies not in escaping fear, but in transforming it. With ancient wisdom and modern tools together, the path remains clear. Face fear, see through it, and walk forward unshaken. Fear is born of judgment, and it dies in reason. This is the truth the Stoics gave us, and it is the truth you must carry if you wish to live free. For every shadow that has frightened you, every worry that has weighed you down, was not the thing itself, but the meaning you placed upon it. Poverty, death, rejection, failure. These are only events. It is the mind that decides whether they are unbearable, and it is the mind that can decide otherwise. The hidden Stoic mindset that conquers fear is not a mystery anymore. It is the union of two disciplines, to accept fate with love and to focus only on what lies within your control. When you welcome life as it comes, when you embrace not only fortune but misfortune as necessary parts of the whole, fear finds no place to hide. When you narrow your attention to what is truly yours, your thoughts, your actions, your virtue, you discover a freedom no external force can touch. In this mindset, fear ceases to be an enemy. It becomes a companion, a teacher, a reminder that courage is being forged within you. Imagine what your life would look like if fear no longer ruled you. How many words would you speak that you now silence? How many steps would you take that you now delay? How many choices would you make with boldness instead of hesitation? This is not a distant dream. It is the life that Stoicism opens before you. Marcus Aurelius faced plague, war, and treachery, yet wrote each day to remind himself that life is fleeting, that death is natural, that courage is always post.